welcome everyone to this presentation. We are so fortunate today to have Susan Wooden with us, who is the new superintendent of Alpena Public Schools. And I just learned has been in her job for 4 weeks. So she's just finding her way around, and we're very fortunate to have her take this time to spend with us and tell us what her view for the future is with the Alpena Public Schools. With that, Susan, I am going to turn it over to you, and you can start your presentation to us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Susan. I appreciate the invitation to present to your members today. I'll tell you, this position is probably the toughest position that I've ever had in terms of dealing with a worldwide pandemic and trying to keep kids safe while we educate them. So I'll just start with that. But I'm certainly up for the challenge and want to be part of the solution. If I can help the Alpena committee, being new here, I really want to be as helpful as I can. So a little bit about me. I am 54. I have been married to my husband, Russell, for 32 years. He is a retired ASE certified automotive technician, and he's currently working for Everett Goodrich Trucking and Paving Company. So he's really enjoying that. We've only been in this area for a year now. Moved up here in July of last year, obviously. We don't have any children, but I always tell people that I have thousands of children, of course, and I love them like my own. So with that, I did retire from education a year ago. We moved to the Alpena area because my parents live here. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Marvis McNeil. She was a Rista. She's the church organist on 2nd Avenue at the St. Paul Lutheran Church. She's been there for over 30 years now. And my father is a retired superintendent of public schools, and he has ties with the Alpena-Alcona Area Credit Union as a past president, president of the board of the AMA ESD. So he's always dabbling in anything education. But with them being, up in years now, I felt that it was appropriate and time to move home. Even though I wasn't born and raised here, I was raised primarily in Shiawassee County, downstate. This has always felt like my home because we would come up here every year of my life for holidays and summer breaks and visit with relatives and cousins and so on. So I do feel home, especially with my parents here. So with 30 years in education, again, it felt right to retire a year ago. I worked previously at Owasso Public School District for 23 years, and I was an English major there. I taught English classes at grades 7 through 12. I had an advanced placement composition class with 11th and 12th graders. That was probably my very favorite class to teach. And I ended up there going into administration after getting a master's degree and became their curriculum director for 9 years. So I handled curriculum, instruction, assessment across the district. That's a Class A, large district, very much like Alpena. And then from there became their interim superintendent and moved on to become a superintendent at East Jordan Public Schools. And then from East Jordan over in Charlevoix County, I wanted to get back to the Sunrise side near mom and dad, and we came over here to then I landed in Beaverton at Beaverton Rural Schools in Gladwin County, which is where I retired from after 6 years as superintendent there. Absolutely loved it. Both East Jordan and Beaverton are Class C school districts. and I attended Byron area schools in Shiawassee County, which was also a Class C. So that size of district, you really feel like you can get your arms around the whole district and get to know everybody on a first name basis. And I really enjoyed that experience. And my father was my high school principal, so that was fun. But anyway, then after retiring, of course, we moved to Alpena and came to learn about Dr. John Van Wagener's vacancy here. I wish him well in Traverse City. He will do a fabulous job. These are hard shoes to fill. He has done so much good here in the Alpena Public School District. I'm very proud of his tenure. It was a 4-year tenure here, but he has increased the fund equity here. He has gotten the trajectory for Alpena schools, positive trajectory going upward. We have great instructional programming here that I intend to enhance as best that I can as we start school the end of August, K-12, and I'll get more into that in a couple minutes. But again, he has done so much here, and I'm very proud of him. And increasing technology, that's one of the big things that he's done. We're now able this year to provide students a 1-to-1 ratio, so that's 1 device per student if and when we ever need to go into phases 1 through 3, which would be emergency remote learning, which is what the district did last spring, unfortunately. But we're ready, we're organized, we're working on finalization of the back to school plan, and we're in the midst of that planning right now. And like I said, I'll get into that in a couple more minutes. First of all, I'd like to talk about the communication piece here for the school district. One thing that I feel is so important, especially in light of getting kids back in school with a worldwide pandemic going on, is communication. We need to make sure that we're communicating with all of you, our stakeholders, our APS supporters, our constituents, all of the parents that care so much about their kids' safety and academics. So what I've done is put together a weekly communication. I'm calling it the APS Summer Highlights Weekly Communique, and it looks like this. And just show that to you there. So this particular edition is 6 pages, but usually they range, I've only done 3 now for the last 3 weeks, but they usually range anywhere from 2 to 6 pages long, depending on how much information I have to share. But I am trying to, again, help parents feel better and staff feel better about getting back to school, getting back to some sense of normalcy and education, which is what our passion is. And to work with kids face to face. So as long as the Alpena community is in phases 4 or 5 per Governor Gretchen Whitmer's designations, then we're okay to meet with kids face to face with some major virus mitigation protocols in place. Again, I'll get into that in a little while. But the weekly communique, I think, is beginning to help people feel more informed, especially this summer with a leadership transition of their superintendent. Again, the board hopes to have a permanent superintendent in place by at least by the end of September. The hope is to hire that person mid-September, and then I would help usher them in as Dr. Van Wagener did with me for a couple of weeks, working side by side with them to ensure that they're aware of what the big projects are, the priorities, the timelines, anything due to the state or MDE, Department of Treasury, all of those technical pieces that a permanent superintendent would need to be on top of before taking the helm. So the other piece that we're doing to increase our communication to constituents is a marketing plan. The administrative team has done a great job. I take no credit for this. I'm very proud of the leadership team that Alpena Public Schools has here. The central office staff have been beyond welcoming and very supportive of me, just extremely helpful and very competent at all of the specific duties that they do. So I commend Alpena Schools for hiring the right people at the right time. You've got quite a team here, and we're in good hands, I would say, with this entire team. But they have worked hard on a marketing plan for the district. And if you look at the homepage of the Alpena Public Schools website, which can be found at alpenaschools.com, you'll notice a brand new look. And it highlights the 3 different types of instruction that are available to students depending on parents and students' anxieties about returning to face-to-face instruction this fall. If they are anxious about it and not feeling comfortable sending their students back to brick and mortar, well, then there are some other options, and those are highlighted now on our homepage, also on the billboard out there by Walmart. So we've procured that space, again, to communicate and to market the district. And we're doing other marketing activities that are lower key, such as TV interviews, radio interviews, things like that. In a venue like this, where I can speak to you and tout, what the district has to offer and why coming back is the right thing to do, and potentially choosing Alpena Public Schools as your new school district to come to for a variety of wonderful reasons. So the communique, I will talk further with Florence and with Susan about how to email this to your members. I think it would be good weekly update in terms of what we're doing over here, what we're getting done. So that takes me to the third piece that I wanted to talk to you about today, which are some priority projects that I was told to be sure, are handled well, and that all the details are always communicated, organized, and that these pieces are buttoned up with particular timelines. So the first one I want to talk about is the bond project. First of all, on behalf of the Alpena Public Schools Board of Education and the district itself, we thank you. We thank you for your support to keep kids safe, warm, and dry. I understand that was the motto, the phrase that was used during the bond campaign, but this really needed to be done. And for all the right reasons, you supported it and helped us probably communicate the right information out there, and I cannot thank you enough. Being a veteran superintendent who has been through 2 successful bonds prior to coming here, I'm really happy that the Alpena community is so supportive in terms of supporting our initiatives. Something as big as a $33.9 million bond is huge. If you want more information on bond projects, how it's going, again, that's on our website, and you can find that as you dig deeper into it. There's a bond section, and there's one particular sheet. It's a 1-page with colored blocks on it that outlines the bond projects at each school building. That to me is particularly informational. If you ever want to meet with me and have a cup of coffee in my office, I'm more than happy to do that. Just be sure to call Lori Nisha, my administrative assistant, because right now, as you can imagine, my calendar is super packed, and I'm enjoying it. It's tough, but I would definitely welcome an individual meeting with any of you to answer questions, talk to you further about bond projects. But mainly what we're doing with bond is we're looking at repair or replacement of roofs, of boilers. We have some asbestos removal in some particular places and particular buildings. We're not looking at doing anything fancy or above and beyond that the community would not agree with. The community was very well vetted before going into this bond campaign, and I think that we listened loudly and clearly as to what the community wanted in terms of the size of the bond that they would support and the types of construction or renovation projects that the community would support. So that pretty much sums up bond. We are working with two companies. One is an architectural firm that would also supply a civil engineer, you know, when we're looking at laying out parking lots for traffic flow, things like that, which is a much needed measure at many of our schools in the district. But that architectural firm is IDI, and I've worked with them before, actually. So I have a relationship with that company, which is an unbelievable coincidence that I already know these people. So it's great. And the other company, which is the construction company, is Walgast Construction. And once again, I have worked with Walgast prior to coming to Alpena. And so I've already met with them several times to go through all of the projects. We're in the midst of what's called the design phase, looking at the footprint of each building, looking at current parking situations, and how we can improve those pieces. The one thing that's at the top of the list, and which is very concerning to me and important to me, particularly because we just did this at Beaverton School District down in Gladwin County, are secure entrances. So we are looking very carefully at what will the building look like, what will the campus look like when students are in buildings getting their education. It is important to keep them safe, warm, and dry, but particularly safety in this day and age is concerning to all of us. So I'm looking very hard at the entrances, and we're looking at, you know, putting blanks, which are just round discs that would go inside the other doors around the building, limiting the number of egresses into the building by staff or by anyone. So there are many, many safety measures that we're taking a look at, but those secure entrances need to be on point, and they need to be as up to date as we can possibly afford, but again, within reason of the budget of the bond. One of the things that I did was invite law enforcement into these discussions. So we have an officer at the table every time we meet with the construction firm and the architectural firm, and his name is Eric Smith, and we appreciate his availability to sit down with us. I believe he's from the Sheriff's Department as an undersheriff. and he's been very valuable in terms of what it should look like, because not only are the entrances secured and important, but what should the building inside look like as officers are dealing with a crisis and having to navigate the building. So we're really in deep discussion there. Anyway, further discussion with the bond. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take those later. But again, I'm always pleased to meet with you if you have any detailed specifics that you'd like me to expound upon. Another project that we're doing, which I want to make this crystal clear, is completely not tied to the bond, is a track renovation behind the junior high school building. That track is in super bad shape, and we're at a point where we're having to turn away other high schools in our league, because it's literally unsafe for student athletes to run on. And so we have, prior to my arrival, Dr. Van Wagener and the staff here, the athletic director previously, all worked very hard to raise funds and to receive donations for that project. And we have a variety of donations from I just want to get this right, I'm looking at a resource here, from the Besser Foundation. We appreciate the money that they have devoted to this project. The CFNEM Granum Fund has also helped with donating funds. The Youth and Recreation Fund, and when the project for the turf was done at the football field by, I believe it's the Park family, I hope I got that right, there was a little bit of carryover left there that we can put toward the track as well. But we appreciate the donations that we've received for that to make that renovation project safe for student athletes to run on. The third piece that I wanted to mention has to do with the current transportation facility of ours, which is out there by Meyer on M32. That particular building, we're in conversation with a company right now with only a letter of intent from them to us. And of course, we're working with our school attorneys through this to see if this is something that is a possibility. But we've been approached by a company that would like that piece of land in particular. It is a prime location for another entity for the community, but that would mean moving the facility to the school campus. Now, if that were to happen, it would really be a win-win in my mind, because it would take that facility, move it to our school campus, and then if there were some sort of a crisis or emergency, our buses are available like that. And we're more capable of utilizing the transportation more immediately than we have been in the past. And it would keep the transportation director closer to all of us on campus. And then when you look at those buses pulling out, that's quite a large bus fleet that we have to cover, over 600 square miles of our district. Pulling out onto M32 with that many buses is quite a feat. And so again, bringing the facility onto campus, possibly over by the football field at the high school area, would be, I think, a good move. In order for that to happen, that would be no cost to the district. That's why this is something that we're researching with this company. Again, we're only at the letter of intent phase of this. We're delving into it very carefully, deliberately, ensuring that there would be no harm to the district financially or liability-wise or anything like that, and discussing the pros and cons of doing that. So that's where we're at with that project. You'll learn more about that in my communique as I learn more about that. So, but it is something that's on the table that we thought would be at least worth investigating with our attorneys. Beyond that, the day-to-day operation of a Class A school system is a lot of work. But like I said, I'm up for the challenge, and I'm always learning more each day, working with a very supportive staff. The final piece then that would take the most time, I think, and what you're probably very curious about, is the back to school planning. So with that, what we've done is we've started meeting with all of the groups of administrators, teachers, bargaining units that we would need to meet with, including now parents, in order to design a plan with all of that input before we submit it to our local ESD, which is of course the Alpena, Montmorency, Elkona ESD, and then they would from there submit it to the Michigan Department of Education for approval. But before any of that happens, of course, it's important to get input from all of our constituents, our parents, and so on. And then our Board of Education would approve it before it can go to the AMA, ESD, and then on to the state. So we're on a very tight timeline. But once we received Governor Whitmer's back to school roadmap document, that put us on a positive trajectory for what the requirements were for each of the 6 phases. And once again, phases 1 through 3 regarding this pandemic would mean no face-to-face instruction is allowed. Emergency remote learning would be how we would educate our students. And then phases 4 and 5, would allow for face-to-face instruction, but with stringent mitigation requirements. And then phase 6 would be everything is back to normal. And I believe it will be some time before our school district sees phase 6. But I'm hopeful that we stay in phase 5 for a while. Our parent meetings have begun this week, and we're calling those parent informational sessions. And the reason for those is twofold. Number one, it's to let the community know what our education will look like in the fall with face-to-face instruction and the different types of instruction that students may pick from if they're uncomfortable with face-to-face. And the second reason is to garner input from them. So when they come in the door for these meetings, I have 19 of these lined up, 4 of which we have already had. Tonight we have the high school forum, and then of course there's a community-wide one. They're all in person, but also electronically televised, for instance, on Facebook pages and via Zoom and things like that. So each principal is getting the information out there recorded by some means of electronic communication. But I would like to go through the 3 different types of ways that students can receive an education while still being a student at Alpena Public Schools. So the first, of course, is face-to-face, coming back to school, into the facility. At the elementary level, in grades 1 through 5, we are using a model called cohorting. And through the cohorting model, which is endorsed by the governor, it's endorsed by medical personnel in terms of a mitigation type of model to reduce the risk for students. That's where grade levels in classrooms would be in cohorts where they do not intermingle or intermix with other grade levels within the building. So once they come to school through the door, they go right into the classroom where they would stay with that cohort from that cohort of families, which, are sending their students to school healthy with no symptoms until, of course, we have a concern with a student who might be presenting a symptom. Then we have a whole protocol of things to do there. But as long as they're within their cohort and we keep them there throughout the day, except for passing times in the hallway when they would have to wear a facial covering, or other times when they're navigating the building to, for instance, go outside for recess, things like that, they would not have to wear a facial covering in the classroom during the day, except for when they're navigating around or going outside. Once they're outside and they're with their cohort, of course, we want them to get that fresh air, and they can take their mask off and breathe fresh air, those types of things. So we understand these are young children who are greatly impacted by something that they've never had to deal with before. So we're trying to use a model that would give them the most flexibility and the most opportunity to breathe freely without a mask. At the middle and high school levels, that would be grades 6 through 12, as you can imagine, the opportunity to cohort groups of students just isn't possible. At the secondary level, that's where kids start to branch out and they go to different teachers' classrooms for different subject areas. So 6 through 12, they will be wearing a facial covering or a mask throughout the school day. Again, it's not ideal, but it is a mitigation measure that must certainly be followed in order to keep them healthy. Staff members would certainly wear facial coverings throughout the day, and like I said, we have some protocols in place having to do with, when we find a student or a staff member who is presenting symptoms that could be of the COVID nature, we have a protocol that the CDC and our local Department of Health number 4 are guiding us with. So we'll have that completely nailed down, and we'll be following those measures very carefully should someone within the district be presenting those symptoms. Getting students to school, I'll address that, and getting them home. When they come to school, we are asking parents to health screen their students, their children, before coming to school. And that means taking their child's temperature before they get on the bus, before they come to school, whether they walk, ride the bus, or whether they're transported by parents. They are to do that screening at home. Now, we are going to offer the parents a screener, a series of very specific questions that they will ask their child every morning relative to COVID symptoms, along with, of course, taking their temperature. As staff members, we're already required to do that. When I come to work every day, I am required to wear my mask in the door, down the hallway to my office. I'm required to fill out an Excel spreadsheet with all of those COVID symptomatic questions. I'm required to put down my temperature that I took this morning before coming to speak to you, and also what time I'm in this building, the exact hours that I'm here, and the hours that I leave this building, so that should there ever be an exposure, even here at central office, as we would follow in our buildings, we can easily contact trace who was in the building at what hour, and were there any symptoms prior to that. So we're trying to model here at central office for our principals in the buildings, who are modeling for their teachers, who are modeling for students, and modeling for parents what the proper protocols are. And again, we're living in a time that's very uncharted, and I would say we're still learning as we go, but I'm confident that we will be able to educate students face-to-face with a variety of measures in place that will keep them safe, and try to, once they're here in the buildings, give them the environment that they have always enjoyed. You know, we want education to still be fun. We want it to be engaging. We want kids to want to get on the bus to come here. We don't want them to be afraid. And like I said, there are many other measures that I've probably missed, but maybe those will come out in the question answer portion of this presentation. Just one quick backtrack to transportation. We will have the windows down on the buses as much as possible for fresh air to circulate. But again, we will still have to carry the same amount of students that we have in the past. We will not be able to put 6 feet between each student, but based upon how many students come back for face-to-face education, that may free up some seats with families, students who have chosen a different mode of education, at least for a semester. When a parent chooses what type of education that they're comfortable with to begin school this fall, they must commit for 1 semester. We can't jump around between the different modes. It just isn't possible. Not to mention, our pupil accounting office needs to stay on top of where our pupils are and when they're with us, in order to receive appropriate state aid for the number of full-time equivalent students that we have here. So it's all a domino effect. Every decision affects the next decision, which affects the third and the fourth and the fifth, and so on. Every decision that we make, from the large priority decisions right down to what someone might think is a very small decision, impacts every aspect of the district relative to safety, instruction, funding, and all of those types of things, including legal pieces that could put the district in a liable position. We don't ever want to do that. So we're being very collaborative in the development of this plan, internally and now externally, with your input, with our parents' input at 19 different parent informational sessions, so that we do the right thing for kids. I'll take questions now.
So to me, this all sounds overwhelming. I just wish you the best going forward with this. I can't imagine having to make all these plans. But I do, the one question that one of many I could probably have, but the one thing I was thinking about were the buses and moving them to the high school campus. I'm just wondering if you think there's room there to do that. And maybe the firm that you're hiring will explore that further, I would hope. But that's kind of a concern that I have.
That's a great concern, Florence. I think that's the immediate concern of most people, including our internal staff. And you're right, we're working with a firm that has laid out an initial footprint of what that could look like, whether or not there's room by the football field area over there. And what we have discovered, at least on initial first glance of this footprint that's been laid out, is that there does appear to be room for that facility and for parking of the buses in a fenced-in area designated for that. One of the concerns is that the ground there, that there's a lot of sand there, and we would definitely need to probably bring in gravel or pavement, you know, one or the other, and maybe do some more fundraising to complete that. But the space that's available does appear to exist. So, good question.
Thank you.
I would have to agree with Florence. This is an extremely overwhelming situation for anyone to undertake, and I applaud you for coming in 4 weeks later and having to try to implement all of these plans. I can't even imagine at this point. And as I hear young parents talking about the concerns of sending their kids back to school and what, you know, the plans are, and I know that I know a couple of people were attending your meetings last night about middle school and what it was going to mean. And so, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things that parents don't know and have a great concern over, but also wanting to get their kids back into a normal as possible education situation. Do we have any other questions for Susan?
Hi, this is Dick Bremer. You mentioned you have a weekly newsletter come out, I believe. Is that on your website or is that separate?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that. Yes, we are posting those on the home page.
Okay, so we could get a link for our e-news so people are aware that it's available.
Yes, that
Okay.
would be fantastic.
So do we have any other questions?
And this is Dick Bremer again. In terms of start of school, what's the target date right now?
August 31st.
Okay.
And then we would have professional development with teachers the week before that for 3 days. So everything is set to go as planned with those start dates until further notice from Governor Whitmer.
Well, as everyone else said, yeah, it's a huge challenge. Best wishes.
Very much.
I'm just glad it's you and not me. Ron, did you have a question?
To do this, and but one comment on the busing with the windows down, that certainly makes sense. I'm just wondering about in the middle of the winter how we do that.
You know, that's a great question, Ronald. You know, weather permitting is all I can say. You know, the masks will be worn whether windows are up or down, but we would hope even on the coldest days, maybe we could just crack them for some ventilation. As long as we can get some fresh air flow through there, that would be the goal. If we had students feeling very uncomfortable because of rain or cold, of course we would accordingly not put them down. But we've been the recommendation from health officials is try to keep them at least cracked, if not all the way down on at least good weather days.
First blush, it sounds kind of awful, but it does seem doable.
Yes, the buses will also be disinfected after each route. You know, once the buses are in from the morning route, they'll be completely disinfected before they go out for the afternoon route and so on. And then of course, after that route at the end of the day to prepare for the next morning. So the transportation piece is very, very important, obviously. We're also looking at when students get on the bus and board in the morning, they will be handed a disposable daily mask, which are provided by the district. So those who are our bus riders, they'll get a mask every morning, and then as they depart for the day to their house, they'll put the mask in some sort of receptacle at the front of the bus. So, and of course, they're allowed to bring their own facial covering as long as they're keeping it laundered.
Yeah. So that would be they'll have the ability to have a disposable mask for the day when they get on the bus, and then that'll last them. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have any other questions? Okay, not hearing any more questions, I want to thank you, Susan, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule right now to do this presentation, and we'll work on getting the link to your newsletter to go out on our e-news, which goes out every week, and hopefully that will help to keep which most of us don't have children in your school system, but we do have grandchildren. And so there's a lot of our members have grandchildren that are attending and are experiencing a lot of the same concerns as the parents for the kids going back to school. So this is great. We really appreciate you taking the time. And this has been recorded, and we will be putting it up with the other sessions that we've recorded also in our list and be made available to all of our members. So I just want to thank you again, and have a great day. I'm sure your day is very full.
Yes. I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully I can meet some of you in person.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Wish you well.
Thank you, Mark.